I don't know if you meant to do it or not, but you seem to have hit the trifecta of people that were born and bred in the cities and ended up in the primary industries, which is exactly what you're after. But look, I was born and bred in Perth, and I grew up around the live export trade. So my father was involved in it, and as a young kid, when port security wasn't as strict as it is today, I used to, after school, go down to the wharf and sit in the captain's room while waiting for the rest of loading to finish. So it's something that I've sort of always been around. Then it progressed that I always sort of say I never had a real job or a normal job in high school. So I never worked at the McDonald's or the clothing store or anything. I was working in cattle yards, trying to because that's just sort of where I ended up working. And so I grew that sort of familiarity with the trade. And then through university, in the breaks, I started going on board the vessels as a stock person. So I would be in charge of the health and welfare of the animals while on board. And that was just once again another progression. And once I finished uni, I really thought I was going to end up doing international business in something, and somehow ended up in the trade, and I've been here ever since. And it's one that once you get involved with it, it just sucks you in, and you just become really engrossed by it. And 10 years later, here I am.
So John, what courses did you complete when you finished school to support you to get to where you are?
So at uni, I did a undergraduate in economics and finance, and then I went on and did a master's in international business. I pursued those courses primarily because that's what interested me, not as basically trying to set it up for a trade into live X, but I think it's becoming really important, and I think we'll get to it a bit later, but changing perceptions of what it is for primary industry. The need for having primary industries isn't just having to do the hard labor out in the field. It is now lawyers, currency traders, marketing, bankers. It is so more professional and requiring those skills into the future that it's really important to understand that primary industries is more than just the hard yards in the field. I mean, currently with the job that pays me, because I wear a couple of other hats at the same time for the industry, I focus on the marketing, so in market selling the livestock. I do a lot of the operations, like managing the operations, and a lot of the policy work. As you can imagine, the industry has a lot of policy over it, and we've got a lot of regulations, so it's continually adapting and understanding what that policy is and how we can apply it. That's primarily the role that I take at the moment. So I spend most of my time actually in the office. And that's when I was able to travel. I was traveling around Australia and up into market pretty frequently, but nowadays I'm sort of made to be in the office most of the time, and that's probably part of the job that I miss with COVID, is being able to get out and break up that sort of continuity of just being in the office. But I got into the role. I had previously experienced hands-on with the livestock, and then a new position was created for me 2012, and it was an SCAS manager role. And SCAS is the Exporter Supply Chain Assurance System. It's the responsibility for the animal in market from delivery right through to the point of slaughter. So as an exporter, we need to be in control of the animal and ensure its health and welfare right through the supply chain. So that was the initial role that I took on, and from there, as I understood a bit more of the business side of it, I took on more of the marketing and the operations policy role. But you then asked about research, and I think research really ties in with the policy side, because without good research, you don't really have the necessary evidence to really try to affect policy and try to adapt it. So continual research is essential for an industry to keep on progressing, because if you're not looking at ways to do things better or become more efficient, or thinking about different ways on how to handle a situation, once again, you'll be left behind. In one of my other roles, I chair the state association, and that's about getting together the necessary supply chain participants. So that's not only the exporters, but it's also transport providers or shipping agents, or even the ship owners. And for example, we came together recently and tackled an issue, and it's about creating that network, because as a united front, you're able to achieve a lot more than everyone trying to go alone. So expanding that network, keeping in touch, the flow of information is essential. And realistically, I mean, the greatest thing about networks is the amount of information that you can learn through them.
And you're involved with a young livestock export group, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So last year, we recognised that in order to really promote the continual improvement and that continual learning that we talked about earlier, it was best to set up a new network, the Young Live Exporters Network. And this was about providing professional development opportunities for people within the live export supply chain. So industry has been super supportive of us, but we decided, all right, well, the best way to actually learn new skills is to get together and sort of get the money behind us to be able to then go out and teach ourselves whatever we want to do. But then the networking side is also extremely important, because when people feel connected, they're more likely to pick up the phone and talk to someone that helps not only people be able to progress through their jobs, but you can solve issues easier. You can just reach out, and it makes it a much more unified industry when you have that sort of connection to each other, instead of just being Farmer Joe and he waved his cattle as they drove out the farm gate. No, you know who he is, how he deals with everything, and at the same time they can get to know us as the exporter or the transporters and be confident in what they do. I think the number one skill that you have to have is problem solving. It's the idea that if something comes up, don't just throw your toys out and walk away. You've got to find a solution. You've got to get the job done. So how do we go about it? It's so vital, and with everything that I do, it's just, you have 100 problems a day. Well, you got to find a way through them, and that's where, for me, it's such a vital skill. Communication, again, I think I go from talking to people in market, so we have language issues and things like that, right through to people in the supply chain in Australia right through to Canberra. So how you talk to each of those three different parties is a completely different way. Canberra, you need to be very particular about how you say things and more professional level. The in-market guys, you need to use simpler language and be very clear in what you're trying to say. And then if you're talking to the supply chain, it's a different way again. So communication is essential. I was trying to think of a way to wrap up the third one, and attention to detail, paperwork, all this sort of stuff. Gone are the days that you can get by with just doing any job and just doing an operational level. Operational nowadays always include paperwork, and if you think you're going to avoid it through the rest of your life, you're dreaming. So it's better to learn how to deal with it, suck it up, and get into it. But having that attention to detail, to not only with your own work to ensure that it is correct, the right information, but having the skill to then look at another piece of paperwork that's incoming and scan it quickly for any obvious errors, because that can, if you can quickly pick those up, the quicker the issue could be resolved. Look, I don't find, I think it's important as well, and I quite now look for people that have been through university, not for their degree, I couldn't care less what they did it in, but I know that they then have the ability to read, assess, and then write at a high enough level that you know you can just throw stuff to them and they're able to write a report or write a decent email, and it's going to be grammatically correct, it's going to have good terminology, and you get a more professional result generally. Yeah, look, we're not yet fully utilizing technology to the best of its capabilities. I mean, recent things have been they've worked with the University of Sydney, I believe, about getting automatic sheep counting machines. So when you're loading ships of 70,000 sheep, instead of having someone there with a clicker, they can just have it automatically doing that. I mean, on a very basic level, a lot of actually livestock sales are now just done by photos, videos sent over the phone, which you before had to have people flying all around the country or internationally to inspect, where nowadays it's just done with the phone. But I think it's going to be, there's big opportunities in the future. I mean, they're starting to work on facial recognition of cattle. So we have a big thing about control and traceability through the supply chain once they get into market. So instead of just relying on the nils tag and an animal's ear, we can start looking at the face and uniquely identifying every animal, and big data, looking really in the feedlotting industry and market about identifying animals that are having high gains, and then getting rid of the ones that aren't putting on weight quickly enough, so then you're not pouring money down the drain unnecessarily. Funnily enough, COVID might help in this situation, because the new gap year should be go work on a cattle station up north instead of going to London or the usual hotspots. I think that's probably a great way to be introduced to the industry and really connect with the agricultural field. I mean, there's nothing, if you lived in the city your whole life, nothing like going to a cattle station where some properties can be 1 million acres big type thing. So look, that's a great way to enter in, and it rides up through the industry that way. Also, we've got the Young Live Exporters Network, Wyland. people become a member of that, you're hooked right into the industry straight away, and with people at all levels of the industry, and that's a great way to make yourself known and then work your way in. And the other one is jump in and have a go and apply for jobs when they're there, because at the end of the day, as Elle was saying, uni degrees aren't required necessarily. It's about having the willingness to say yes and have a go, and a bit of hard work, and you can't go wrong. Realistically, we have surplus of goods, and we've got Southeast Asia right there. Combined, you've got 500 million people at your doorstep, and 1 billion more plus in China above it, and they're all wanting our products. The primary industry is going to change dramatically over the next couple of decades. It's already started, and the room for growth and potential is just astounding. It is the next big industry, and if you're wanting to get in and secure a future for yourself, and have a career that's going to be there in 50 years' time, I think primary industry is the main one, because at the end of the day, everyone needs food and fibre. And unlike the mining industry, I mean, primary industries isn't really going to run out, because we're constantly producing and looking to be sustainable, and that's about having the ability to produce even more as time goes on.